I hereby call this March the 16th meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. Before we get started, I want to take a moment and recognize the various department heads that we have here in emergency management and in public safety. First of all, we have our city manager staff led by our city manager, Mr. Lee Garrity. Also, we have our city attorney staff led by our city attorney, Angela Carmen. Also, we have the emergency management department led by Mr. Milton Sadler. We also have Chief Mayo, who is representing our Winston-Salem Fire Department here, and our many police personnel administration. Thank you for being here, led by our Chief, Chief Roundtree. There are 4 items on the general agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be unanimously approved unless the council member wishes to have it pulled for discussion. With that being said, members of the committee, are there any items that should be pulled for consideration? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion and properly second. All in favor, please show by saying aye. Aye. That is unanimous. We will now move to the first item on the general agenda.
Presentation to Michelle Brock for her Certified Emergency Manager designation.
Michelle Brock, please come up. And as she comes to the podium, we do have a certificate to present to Ms. Brock, and I can say as a gentleman who's been to some of the emergency management meetings, I got to say that you're always what we call on point. You're knowledgeable. You know exactly what you're doing, and we appreciate your service. But to those who may be here and to those who may be watching, Ms. Brock has earned the recognition from the International Association of Emergency Managers by being among the group of professionals designated as a certified emergency manager. Now, this is the highest honor that can be received by this profession. And, you know, just under 1,500 folks have received this designation. So, Ms. Brock, as I said, we definitely want to present you with this certificate. I'm sure there are members of the committee who have words for you. But at this time, if you can come. And hopefully I'll talk loud enough so everyone can hear. We definitely appreciate your service, everything that you've done for our city and our county, everything that you will do. We appreciate your willingness to serve. And, you know, not very many people have this award and this designation. So thank you, and we really appreciate you on behalf of the Public Safety Committee and the City of Winston-Salem. Ms. Brock, we're not going to let you off the hook because we want to have a few words from you. Yeah. But before we do that, I'll pass it around to see if any members of the committee have any words. Councilmember Burke.
Yes, I was going to say, it seems like you have someone here with you.
I do.
Well, what? Let them come
Please
stand with
yeah.
you. Let them.
My husband, Michael Brock, he's a city firefighter. He's captain. And my son, Stephen Brock.
Well, we would just like them to come stand with you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, my daughter couldn't be here. She's 16 years old and plays softball, and you know how important that is for teenagers.
Well, while you have the floor, would you have any words for us?
I do. I really enjoy being in emergency management. I've been there in emergency management for over 9 years, and I've served the city for over 15. Started out in utilities as a chemist. And so I really enjoy working for the city and serving the citizens, and I look forward to building the resilience in our community in the future.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Light.
I have had the pleasure of not only being on the emergency management committee, but also some of the classes that Michelle has taught, the weather warning and whatever, and she's the tops. So.
Councilmember Adams?
Yes, you know I'm one of your biggest fans. I commend you in everything that you're doing for the citizens of Winston-Salem, and I want to thank your family for allowing you to be there for all of us all the time. Keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And you've got a thumbs up from Councilmember Bessie. So again, Ms. Brock, we really appreciate you, and thanks to your family for allowing you to do this. I think as we move on to item G2, we have a number of things on the agenda talking about crime statistics, domestic violence grants, and the fire department staffing plan. It's good to hear stories like Mrs. Brock's and to stop and smell the roses. With that being said, Madam Secretary, item G2, please.
2014 preliminary crime statistics and use of force summary briefing.
Giving this presentation is our Police Chief, Chief Barry Roundtree. You have the floor, sir.
Good afternoon, Chairman Taylor
Good afternoon.
and members of the Public Safety Committee. I'll be brief. I know you do have a packet of several slides in your book, and I know we have a pretty tight agenda, so I'll hit them very briefly as I go through it, and I'll entertain any questions at the end. How do I turn this on? Again, I'll be reporting on our 2014 preliminary crime statistics. Of course, we will be providing our final numbers to the State Bureau of Investigation in April next month. What we try to do is report accurately on the reported crime in the city of Winston-Salem. You know, we've seen some cities what they are doing to give the appearance that their crime is not what it really is, but what we want to do is to give you the total complete information on our crime statistics as far as what citizens are reporting to us. What I'll do is mainly focus on our Part 1 crime. Part 1 crime includes murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assaults. What you see now is a 5-year comparison, 2014 compared to the last 5 years. We didn't have any increases in murders or homicides in 2014 compared to 2015. We did see a reduction in our homicides with firearms. Those were reduced in 2014 compared to 2013. In 2013, there were 14 homicides with firearms. In 2014, there were 11. Also, part of these numbers, there were 2 justified homicides, justified in court of North Carolina law in 2014. Homicide comparison by year, of course, in 2014 there were 15, 13, 15. 2012 we had 8, which is really was a unusual number. Our 5-year average is about 15 per year, and in 2010 there were 11. Just a little breakdown on the homicides. Firearms. Well, we had 11 committed with firearms, 1 with a personal weapon, 1 with a vehicle, 1 with a knife, and 1 with a pipe. That gives you a grand total of 15 homicides for 2014. Just a little bit on the demographics. We had 14 male victims and 1 female victim. 13 victims were black, 1 victim white, and 1 victim Hispanic. Also, just a little breakdown on the known offenders. 9 offenders were black, 2 offenders were white, and 1 offender was Hispanic. And of course, we are doing a campaign to solve our 5 unsolved homicides for 2015. As you see the footnote on the bottom, 10 of the 15 homicides in 2014 have been cleared. Just a little comparison, Winston-Salem compared to other cities of similar size, even though Charlotte is a little larger. Charlotte had 42 homicides in 2014, Durham 25, Greensboro 25, and Raleigh 17. Going to the other numbers.
Excuse me for interrupting. Members of the committee, I think all of these are important. So if it's okay, we'll just take it section by section. If you don't mind, Chief, are there any questions in terms of homicides before the Chief moves on? Chief Roundtree.
Okay. This is just a 5-year breakdown of rapes, 5-year summary. There was a slight increase in 2014 compared to 2013. We did see quite a bit of a reduction in our robberies compared to 2013 and also similar years. We had a 4.2% reduction in robberies. Aggravated assaults, that was our largest increase for our Part 1 crimes. We had about a 37% increase in aggravated assaults, which also increased our overall numbers. Burglary, we did see a reduction, so we had fewer citizens that had their home burglarized in 2014 compared to 2013, and also 2012 and the previous 4 years. Larceny was about the same as the previous 4 years. And motor vehicle theft, we did see an increase in motor vehicle theft. That's also going into the Part 1 property crimes as far as motor vehicle thefts. Violent crime, just a 5-year comparison as a snapshot for you to look at. Property crimes, we did see, remained the same from 2014, from 2013, but we did see a reduction in compared to 2012 and 2011. Part 2 crime overall, you can see the graph for a 5-year summary, just a little slight uptick from previous years. And total crime, we did have about 2.8% increase in our total crime. Just a brief snapshot of our criminal arrest trend. We're trending up from 2010 to 2014 in our criminal arrests. And our Part 1 arrests, you see in 2014 we did have 4,647 arrests. Also, you see here in 2000 for our Part 2 arrests. Any question? I know it was quick. I do have another section to go over. But Councilmember Adams.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes. I would be interested to know, and maybe it's in here, a breakout of the different types of arrests. I'd be mostly interested in the drug arrests, whether they were misdemeanor type marijuana, whether it was heroin, cocaine, that sort of thing, just to see where we're going with that and how many people based on race and age were, arrested and incarcerated behind that.
Yes, ma'am. It's not in this particular report that I provided. Again, this is just a brief snapshot, but that information will be provided in our annual report, and I can also run you a customized report for whatever parameters you'd like to see.
And I think the other council members would like to see that as well, with the way the world is right now, Thank you.
Councilmember Bessie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, this is a very interesting report. It's got some good news and some bad news. I noticed that, as you indicated, robberies and burglaries were both down significantly.
Yes.
On the other hand, assaults were up and auto thefts showed a 1-year big spike. I'm interested in information that you have on causation. I can speculate on things, but I'm to the extent that you've actually correlated cause and effect, it would be very helpful for us to know to give us a sense of where we can better assist and bolster departmental efforts. I know, for example, in burglaries that you've had, I believe, a task force working on that in particular. And anytime I talk with the district patrol captain about break-ins, they're able to respond with what's going on, what they've been working. And I know that there is a separate report here on the domestic violence grant. I'd be interested in knowing whether we have data correlating the aggravated assaults and breaking that out, which of those are domestic in nature, and so trends over time there. So whatever you can tell us on that is appreciated.
Okay. Yes, I'll be glad to provide you a report in the future. I will add that we do focus quite heavily on reducing the number of house break-ins or burglaries. We work together. We try to use a focused deterrence type strategy to focus on our repeat offenders for house break-ins. So I think that was some of the success that we saw on the reduction in our burglaries.
Councilman.
Just one quick follow-up point. I was particularly interested to note that robberies were actually down. Because that runs counter to the impression that I get following the news and following the reports that we get. And that sort of reinforces the degree to which perception is affected by information exchange. I've had the perception that robberies have been up over the past year because we've been getting such, frankly, more regular, better reports about what's going on. So I was delighted to see that actually the reverse was true. Those were down.
Thank you, Mr. Bessie. Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Yes, and can you tell us the areas, not now, but the areas where you have more robberies? And also, do you have a record of this city of how many people have had to purchase security systems in their homes to try to keep people from robbing us?
Yes, I can tell you the number of people who actually register their alarm by city ordinance. We can get you a report on that.
That would be good. Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Councilmember Montgomery.
And this kind of pulls back to Councilman Bessie's question, but more broadly, in terms of kind of presenting something in report form on that aggravated assault piece, looking at what is domestic violence, those there, but across the board, what kind of looking at and zeroing in on those areas of causation. Like what are we looking at and what are we dealing with, and how do we deal with the issues out there? Because primarily we know from a law enforcement standpoint, some of those issues are much deeper than just arresting somebody and putting them in jail. And so how do we use that data to help potentially groups in our community help to address some of those other issues that may exist there?
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
That's a good point. You're talking about the cause of it. Some people are being arrested because they have mental problems. And some people are being arrested because they're hungry. And so they bother other people. And I think we need to have a record, because when you talked about the people who are in jail, the ages of them, and how many of these people, that's important. We're putting a lot of people in jail who really need some mental help. And do we coordinate with the agencies in that way?
Yes, we do. We also send, we have quite a few officers who have attended the CIT program. That's a program where the officers learn how to deal with individuals with mental illness. Because you're correct, a lot of the individuals that we run across, they are suffering from some type of mental illness. And we partner with the Mental Health Association, where we train the officers in Winston-Salem to deal with these individuals.
Any other questions? Councilmember Bessie.
Just one other follow-up comment, segueing from what Mayor Pro Tem Burke just noted. To the extent we can help correlate, and Councilmember Montgomery, to the extent that we can help correlate causative factors with trends, we can be advocates for what programs need to be bolstered or started at the city or the statewide level. If we can identify that aggravated assaults are up in part because of mental illness issues, then we can identify that. If we can associate repeat burglaries with substance abuse problems, or folks attempting to reenter who are recidivists and they're back on on break-ins because they can't find work because of their record. Those are two things that we can address. But the more information we have, the better we can advocate for causation-based solutions.
All great points. It's like we're playing a game of ping pong. Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Since we have had a group of people working very hard with gangs, at one time we didn't want to admit we had gangs, and we said, well, and now we do admit it, and we're moving forward. Do you see any gangs decreasing, or what now?
Our overall numbers, as far as validated gang numbers, are we really haven't seen some of the gang activity that we've seen in some of our sister cities. I'll say it that way. Of course, we are fortunate here. We do have a 10-person full-time gang unit. We feel that we do have a pretty good handle on our gang situation here. Not to say that we are perfect, but we do. That involves a lot of intelligence gathering. We think that we stop a lot of incidents that could happen before they happen, just based on being proactive.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this city was recognized by the state as being a step ahead when it comes to gangs because of the efforts that we're making with volunteers, different agencies, people on a regular basis, and the city manager has assigned a staff person to work directly with our gang committee. So I think that's a plus. And of course, Chief Roundtree is there at the meetings too.
And thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Burke. And I'll just take a point of personal privilege just to briefly discuss the SOAR program, which is a program that this committee and this council has put together to address those types of issues. SOAR stands for Successful Outcomes After Release. And we took a portion of city money and we used it to support nonprofits and organizations who work with former recidivists and ex-offenders. And we also used a portion of that money this spring to create a number of jobs at a livable wage that'll go towards hiring ex-offenders in community and business development, in aesthetics, removing graffiti, whatever it takes to put people to work, because we find that some of the causes in some of our communities are, when people have felonies and misdemeanors on their records, it's difficult for them to find work. They end up going back to what they've done before because no one will give them a chance. I think this city is a trailblazer, and we're getting out in front and we're giving people a chance through the SOAR program and many other programs that we have enlisted here in the city of Winston-Salem. Councilmember Adams.
Yes, one more question. Chief, have we gotten any information or hits from the new social media program by the police department?
Yes, we've had some information to come in. Captain Thompson, she can give you, Captain Thompson or Chief Sutherland, they can give you a little bit more information about it. But since the campaign kicked off, we have received a few tips, a few phone calls, and we are following up on that information.
Thank you.
Councilmember Adams, do you want to get a report on that, or do you want to hear from Captain Thompson now?
No, I just needed to know that something is happening. I know we did a great job of kicking it off, informing all of the people in the community. I've had a couple of people, kind of ask me about it, like how does that go, the anonymity to it. But I just wanted to know, had we received anything? I would have thought that we would have, and I thank you for that. I guess kind of keep us posted if anything ever falls out of it, but I thought that it was a great idea to go ahead and do that, to reach those neighborhoods, because basically their mode of communication is through social media. It's through their phones, social media.
And for those that don't know, the way the initiative works, we're targeting specific zip codes in the areas that we have the unsolved homicides, and we're encouraging people to come forward with any information that they have. They can call us, they can call Crime Stoppers. You don't have to give your name, your phone number, anything like that. And once we receive the tips, we have detectives that are actively working those leads so that we can solve the remaining homicides that we have from 2014.
And Chief, I think you'll agree that one crime is one crime too many. But when you look at the numbers, you look at the stats, among major cities in North Carolina, I would say that we're probably doing the best. Yeah. And we attribute that to some really good citizens, and we attribute that to a good chief and a wonderful police force, especially the police administration. So we appreciate all that you do, and I know we'll continue to get better. And Chief, we'll move forward. I know you've been pretty anxious to present the police department's use of force summary.
Yes, what I wanted to do is nationally there's a lot of attention on police officers' use of force, specifically deadly force. So what I wanted to do is provide the committee a brief overview of, number one, our numbers as far as use of force, and also just to give you a little background information on how we go about training the officers, the laws and the rules that govern the police department's use of force. So first of all, North Carolina General Statute 15A401D authorizes a police officer in the state of North Carolina to use force to effect an arrest. Of course, I'm not going to read each subsection, but there are certain things that the law allows the officer to do in order to effect an arrest. Also, the officer can use force to prevent the escape from custody or effect an arrest of a person who he, the officer, reasonably believes has committed a criminal offense. And under subsection B, the officer can also use force in an arrest to defend himself or a third person from what he reasonably believes is the use of imminent use of physical force while effecting the arrest or attempting to effect an arrest. Also, North Carolina General Statute 15A401D2 is the state statute that authorizes a police officer to use deadly force, deadly physical force in certain situations. Of course, number one, to defend himself or a third person from what he reasonably believes is to be the use of imminent use of deadly physical force. The officer can use deadly force to prevent an escape of a suspect from custody who he reasonably believes is attempting to escape by the use of a deadly weapon. And also under subsection 3, if the person's conduct by itself, where the person is trying to escape, the officer is authorized to use deadly force. And under subsection 4, to prevent the escape of a person from custody imposed upon him as a result of a conviction for a felony. Now you see that in red, that's By law, we're authorized to use that, but the Winston-Salem Police Department does not allow officers to use that. That's primarily for state correctional officers. Also, our rules of conduct govern how the officers use force. And we also have a policy on the use of force that governs how an officer should use force in any given situation. So we're governed by North Carolina General Statutes, and then we're also governed by Winston-Salem Police Department's rules of conduct. And I'll walk through these very briefly just to give you a general idea of our use of force, 2014 compared to 2013. As you see, as far as weapon strikes with an ASP, in 2013 we had one. 2014 we didn't have any. An ASP is the baton that the officers carry, where they are authorized to use that in certain situations. Firearms, 2013 3, 2014 5. And these numbers doesn't mean that a person was actually struck, but the weapon was discharged in a situation. K9, 2013 we had 5, 2014 we had 7. That's not meaning that the K9 was released on the person, but sometimes doing tracks, doing searches of a building, if a person is hiding, the K9 may bite a person. Pepper spray or OC, 2013 we had 27 usage, and in 2014 there was 34. Our taser deployments, 2013 we had 93. 2014 there were 48. And we did change our policy. We tightened up the policy in our taser usage, and we think that's the reason why we saw it's about a 48% decrease in our taser deployments from 2013 to 2014. Citizens' injuries as a direct result of police action. That means that a citizen was injured while the police officer was performing his duty in an arrest or in some kind of situation where the officer, there was a direct result of the police officer and the citizen. From 2014 to 2015, if you look at the totality of it, there was a 29.3% decrease in citizen injuries from 2014 compared to 2013. Whether it was for a takedown, resisting arrest, the person failed, a canine bite, ASP, and so on. Employee injuries as a direct result of performing their duties and interaction with citizens. We had about the same number of occurrences from 2013 to 2014, so it wasn't any increase or any decrease as far as the officers' injuries. Some of the things that, was there a question?
Is there a question about this particular item?
The one that he just finished, yes.
Chief, we'll have to interrupt you if you don't mind.
sorry.
Councilmember Adams.
I like the graph, the Pareto and everything, and the matrix. But on the use of force and citizen employee injuries, and I see down here as best I can what you have down there is the notes. But I'd be interested in, again, another report that tells me what kinds of injuries did the people sustain, or the officer? What did we get? Did they get a broken arm? Did they just get a laceration? Did they require stitches? Was it a head injury, a hand injury? I would like to see that. That's my manufacturing, whatever.
Okay.
But I'd like to see that.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Chief?
Also, what governs the officer's use of force is what we call the use of force continuum. And basically what that is use of force application is dependent upon the suspect's behavior and also what the officer feels and sees from the suspect. If you flip over to the chart that you see on the screen, when an officer arrives on the scene, what he's going to do is assess the call, assess the situation or the person that he's dealing with. You see the arrows going up and down on the left side of the paper, the subject's behavior versus how the officer increases his use of force. So the subject's behavior or the person that's being encountered, his behavior dictates how the officer escalates his use of force. So if you look at number one for the suspect's behavior, presence, any gestures, any stance, any reactions to the officer's presence, you know, the officer counters that with his presence, just the uniform, the physical appearance of the officer. Usually, that's all the force that the officer really needs to handle a situation, usually. And sometimes the officer may need to raise his voice. He may need to give verbal instructions to the person. And that's going to be, like you see in number two, you know, if the person is non-compliant, if he's not listening, if he's not following in the orders of the officer steps up his use of force based on that. And instead of walking through all 5 steps, you see where you get down to number 4. If the person is assaultive, if the person strikes the officer, if the person grabs the officer, if the suspect bites the officer is authorized to escalate his use of force to handle that situation, where he could start using personal weapon strikes. He could start using his taser. He could use his ASP. And of course, on step number 5 in the use of force continuum is the use of deadly force. If the officer's being choked, if the person has a weapon, if the person has a firearm, a knife, the officer feels that his life is in danger, of course the officer is authorized by North Carolina General Statute 15A401 that I went over earlier, where he can also escalate his use of force to counter the deadly force from the suspect. So that's the use of force continuum that the officers are trained on. That's the use of force continuum that we use to handle any given situation. Also, some of the variables that come into play when we're dealing with any individual is, again, the subject's behavior, the totality of the situation that the officer is dealing with. You know, there's numerous variables that come into play: environmental conditions, reaction, you know, time and distance, multiple subjects. You know, it could be a crowd of people around. The size and gender of the officer versus the size and gender of the person that he or she is dealing with. The apparent skill level of the person, and the availability of weapons. So those are the variables that we use, and those are the things that the officers evaluate in the use of his force. Some of the things that are related to training as far as use of force, whether it's on any of the weapon systems that we have. Of course, in our BLET Academy, we provide all the officers over 1,000 hours of instruction, where the state only mandates 620 hours. So we are well above the state minimum range for BLET. But they receive training on constitutional laws of arrest, search, and seizure, transportation, rapid deployment, again, on all the weapon systems that we have, whether it's baton, the OC, the firearms, SCAT, subject control and arrest techniques. Those are all trainings that the officers have in order to handle any given situation. Also, we're also mandated by the state every year, where we have to go through mandated in-service training on use of force, weapons, driving, dealing with juveniles, domestic violence, and we also do legal updates every year. So, any questions related to our use of force and the laws that govern use of force?
Chief, I'll say that that was a good presentation. Thank you for that. I truly believe, and I'll say this many more times, that we have one of the best police departments in America. So we thank you for all of your leadership, what you do for us day in and day out. Chief, I noticed significantly, and we'll get to the other council members' questions, that the use of force in terms of taser use significantly decreased.
Yes.
Now, that wouldn't mean very much if the other forms of force significantly increased, but we didn't see that. What do you attribute directly to the reduction in the use of force in terms of tasers?
Well, I think we made a change in the policy where we changed where it's listed in the use of force continuum. At one point, it was listed on in section 3, and we moved it up to Section 4, where there's a little bit more things that the subject would have to do before we deploy the taser.
Any other questions for Chief Roundtree? Councilman Blight.
I mean, this may sound a little bit silly. I mean, an officer can get shot by someone carrying a gun or whatever, as we know. But I was concerned about the bites, that someone is bitten by the person that they're trying to arrest. Does the department follow up on health issues that could result as a result of a bite?
Yes, there are some requirements. We do have bites from time to time, but there are some requirements as far as having the subject doing the biting where they get tested, and we also do follow-up testing with the police officer.
Go ahead. I'd knock their teeth out.
I didn't know where to go from there. But Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
Well, I was just saying, as Chief Roundtree was speaking, I could not be a police. It takes special people to be police. So I know that with Chief Roundtree and the people who work right next to him and the people who work next to them, it takes a lot of tolerance and patience. And as a former chairman of this committee, I have had many, many meetings about tolerance and patience, and that we want to make sure our police are trained well. We understand that they're humans. And I feel that this city, with the efforts of our neighborhood crime watch people, the individuals, our neighborhood association presidents, the involvement that all of the people seem to have in connecting with our Winston-Salem Police Department, and they're out into the community, and I think they're giving a feeling of a little more comfort in the minds of people to want to communicate with the police. You have to set that tone to make them feel that we all are going to be sensitive about what's going on. But I have said over again to people when they have talked about other places, I said, don't put us in other places.
That's right.
Let us be in this place. We want our tax dollars to be spent wisely with a strong Winston-Salem Police Department, and we commend them. And I'm going to say, as I've said before, we wouldn't have to have police if everybody believed in law and order. Since everybody just can't believe in law and order, we have to have people to make sure that we stay in order. And that's what we strive to do in this community, Chief Roundtree. And we know that our police are human. I've said that many times before. They have feelings just like we have feelings. They are afraid just like we are afraid. But when you train them well, an ordinary citizen who's afraid, they jump first without thinking. But you're training your police to think before they jump. And I just want to say thanks to all of what you're doing to make our city safe. And we can feel real good about the city. We can go to bed at night and sleep with comfort.
That's right.
And we
Thank
pray
you.
that we continue to have the kind of feelings that we have. And I thank all of you.
Thank you.
Councilman Adams.
Yes, thank you again. Ditto to what Councilmember Burke just said. In all of this, again, I just want to recap kind of how are we reaching out to community organizations to engage, again, the young people and our citizens in the community. Yes, we have a great police department, but again, how are we really to the people that really matter, not us, as to how they view you? And how are we reaching out to keep bridging, working on bridging those relationships? Sat in on a workshop at National League of Cities, and the police chief of the district, D.C., came to speak to us. And, you know, she presented her figures as showing that since she's been there, crime has gone down. But she said it didn't happen overnight. She pointed to it again as to good community-oriented policing and the people getting out of the cars and occasionally going to meet the people that live in these neighborhoods so that when things happen, whether it's Ferguson or Winston, that people will say, you know what, that person did come and talk to me or my neighbors, or they're engaged with us, versus just coming to arrest us when something is bad.
Councilmember Alden, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to be as open and transparent as we can. Of course, we're willing to meet. We meet with groups regularly. We participate in different events where we can answer questions, different type forums and public events. Tomorrow, we're also meeting with the group of local ministers where we can just sit down, we can talk about different things that are going on here in Winston-Salem and across the country, and we can hear from them. But those are the kind of things that we're doing in addition to things like our youth police academy, where we can meet with the youth. We can show them that we're just human. You know, we're not just a blue uniform. That way, they'll feel more comfortable dealing with police officers in person. Also, we're doing quite a bit in the schools with our school resource officers, the 20 schools that we have. We have police officers that volunteer on their own time to do different things in the schools that you never hear about in the community. Also, they're working with the students in the schools. Those are the kind of things that we want to continue. We're still pushing and continuing our walk and talk program in the different communities. What we're doing now that we have our body cameras, they're almost fully deployed. We're starting a catalog of all the code contacts where we just go up to people, we engage them in conversation just to talk to them. Hey, how you doing? You know, the weather's nice today. Anything going on in your community? Those are the kind of things that we're trying to push to get the police officers out and just meet with the community.
One more thing, Chair. I know we probably can't do this, City Manager in Chief. I don't know whether everybody caught it on television news. There's this police department that gives money cards to the citizens for doing something great, caught doing something good, much like the program we have with our employees. But they have like these cards that they give them to a family if they see you walking in the designated areas to do the crosswalks. If they see you helping a challenged person get their groceries to the car, they give you a pizza card for $10 for you and your family and come up and talk to you or anything. Now, I don't know. I'm just saying we might need to look into something like that, because even we can't do it all of the time, but if we did it a few times, the word would get around that, you know what, they came and talked to me about a good deed that I did, and they gave me a pizza card for me and my family. So that's just a thought. Thanks.
And if anybody's familiar with the way that drug courts work, they use a series of incentives and sanctions if necessary to ultimately improve the lives of the folks who are in that program. So I think that's definitely a good idea, Councilmember Adams, and I think, Chief, we may have some innovative approaches to making that happen. I see the city manager just nodding his head. Councilmember Montgomery.
Just a comment, following up to Councilman Adams' comments. I agree that, and have had conversations with Chief and City Manager about how we continue to engage in community policing and ways to continue to make sure our officers have as much as possible, you know, those non-enforcement contacts, which I think helps build relationship. Sometimes it's good to compare ourselves, and sometimes it's not good to compare ourselves to other places. When you think about a DC, for instance, and things that are happening there, we all know that crime stems from a lot of different places, but we know that poverty is a big driver of certain things that come and deal with crime. And we know, at least if you look at the numbers, DC is gentrifying very much. And so at the same scale, and I'd be challenged to say, if you look at the numbers at the same way the demographics have changed, the crime has also changed along with that. Right. And so I think we have a lot to do in some other areas for us that the police can't do because the police has a job, and we can't hold the police accountable to do everything, but there's a lot more to be done on some other sides that we have to do. So again, I say thank you, Chief, for all the hard work you do, and the rest of the department.
All right, we'll come to Mayor Pro Tem Burt and Councilmember, Bessie, for your patience. We'll let you have the last word.
I didn't have any other immediate questions. I was just listening with interest. Thank you.
Okay, great. Mayor Pro Tem Burt.
I was going to say, when people were having a lot of concerns, and the President had appointed a person to serve as a national chairman and gather some people to talk about how they could improve their neighborhoods and the kinds of things that they were saying that they needed to be doing. I was pleased to have a letter drawn up and sent to the chairman of that national committee I sent it to the U.S. Attorney for the United States and also the North Carolina Attorney General to let them know we were a step ahead. The things that they were talking about, we have already done them, and we continue to do them. And that is because I do feel that this, starting with the Board of Aldermen to the council people, we don't want to put a price tag in front of the safety of people. And we encourage our chiefs, whether it's fire or police, whatever it takes to help us to have a first-class police department. In fact, we probably had those cameras before anybody. All of them. And the kinds of things that, and we've been able to work with Washington, with our people who represent us there to help us to get certain things that we need. So we commend you. And you could have those kinds of things, but if you didn't have the right attitude of people who work, it's just having them. So your leadership makes a difference, and we thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, Councilmember Bessie.
And now that you've called on me.
Since I brought it up.
Speaking of, using technology, Chief, you're on social media from your presentation a few minutes ago. Okay. And some of your key statistics, I'll probably be getting some questions soon, so I'll need those answers.
All right.
All right, thank you, Chief. We'll move to item G3. Now, members of the committee and council members, I like to start on time and end on time, so we've got another 30 minutes or so. We'll try to move the other two items pretty expeditiously. Item G3, please.
Domestic violence grant award briefing.
And given the report for this item is Captain Katrina Thompson, who we all know and love.
Good evening. Public Safety Chair Taylor.
Good evening.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke, and other members of the Public Safety Committee and City Council. As you are aware, in November of 2014, the North Carolina Governor's Crime Commission awarded our department and City Council approved the acceptance of the domestic violence grant as part of the Violence Against Women Act. North Carolina defines domestic violence as the commission of certain acts by an offender upon an adult or minor child residing with or in the custody of the offender with whom the adult or minor child has or has had a personal relationship. Such acts includes attempts to or intentionally causing bodily injury, placing the victim or victim's family or household in fear of serious bodily injury, and sexual assault. Personal relationships is defined as current or former spouses, persons of the opposite sex who live or have lived together, related as parent and child, grandparent and grandchild, or local parentis or a guardian of a child, have a child in common, current or former household members, persons of the opposite sex who are in a dating relationship or who have been in a dating relationship. In the United States alone, 3 women are murdered on average every day by a current or former male partner. The annual number of women in the United States that experience physical violence by an intimate partner exceeds 4.7 million. 1 in 4 women will be victims of severe violence by an intimate partner in their lifetime. In 2011, over 60% of female homicides were the result of domestic violence incident. Since 2013, the Winston-Salem Police Department has investigated 5 domestic violence-related homicides. 3 of the more notable cases includes the murder-suicide in July 2013 at Forsyth Hospital, where a boyfriend killed his girlfriend in the hospital and then committed suicide. The couple had a child in common. The murder-suicide at Salem Lake in November 2013, where an adult son killed his father and then turned the gun on himself. The Upton Street homicide, where an argument led to a husband stabbing his wife to death in August of 2014. The grant we received is funded through the Violence Against Women Act of 1994. Nationally, the act provides $1.6 billion towards the investigation and prosecution of violence against women. The Winston-Salem Police Department was just awarded $162,500 to be used over a 2-year period to provide salary, equipment, and training for one full-time detective who will exclusively conduct follow-up investigations on domestic violence crimes. Every year since 2012, Winston-Salem have had over 5,000 total domestic violence-related cases. Patrol officers are the first responders who will continue to be the first responders who conduct the primary investigations of domestic violence incidents in Winston-Salem. Once the investigation has begun, a copy of the report is sent to our victims assistance coordinators in the Criminal Investigations Division. Our victim assistance coordinators seek to implement resolutions aimed at stopping the cycle of violence, ranging from prosecuting the offender to providing the victim and the offender with actual usable information concerning available options and appropriate community resources. Now, when we talk about the cycle of violence, what we're talking about here are 3 different stages. One is the tension stage, and in the tension stage, the victim is walking on eggshells with fear of threats and intimidation. The second stage is the actual violence. That's where the actual abuse occur in the form of emotional, physical, and financial abuse, and in some cases, even sexual assault. And then finally, there's the honeymoon stage. This is where the abuser apologizes and try to make up with the victim. In some cases, the abuser may use excuses like drugs or alcohol, or even blaming the victim for the abuse that they've inflicted upon them. The cycle then continues and transitions back to the tension phase. We're very fortunate in Forsyth County. We have some very strong community agencies and resources, some of which I'll mention includes our district attorney's office and the Safe on 7 Center, Forsyth County Family Services, Piedmont Support Services, Mindsight Counseling and Consulting, Wake Forest University Baptist Medical Center, Forsyth Medical Center, and Forsyth County Department of Social Services. The Violence Against Women Act grant has enabled us to take advantage of an opportunity to enhance service delivery to citizens in our community. This enhancement has been accomplished by assigning a full-time detective to work with the victims assistance coordinators to conduct follow-up on our most serious domestic violence cases. The detective is assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division and reviews all felony domestic violence related cases. The victims assistance coordinators are also assigned to the Criminal Investigations Division and assist the detective in identifying cases that may require follow-up. Based on the funding, we've been able to staff one full-time detective's position, and our detective is Officer Nolan Johnson. I'm going to ask Detective Johnson to stand. Also, we have 2 victims assistance coordinators, and I will also ask that they stand, and that's Ms. Cynthia Sullivan and Mrs. Michelle Martin. We're distributing educational material in our community with this graphic to increase community awareness that domestic violence in Winston-Salem is never okay. Our goal is to reduce the number of domestic violence incidents in Winston-Salem, improve the annual clearance rate of domestic violence-related incidents, improve community awareness and response to domestic violence. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Captain Thompson?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Light.
Captain Thompson, all of this is very good, and the education piece of the community at large is very good. But I understand that where it all breaks down is in the courtroom when the victim declines to prosecute, or. So how do we go about helping those victims be able to stand up to their abusers?
Very good question. Thank you. Basically, what we've done is relied heavily on the assistance of our partner agencies. For years, Family Services have provided services in various arenas, so to speak, to our victims and offenders. One of the biggest things that causes our victims to recant are, number one, self-esteem. In some cases, some of our victims believe that love hurts, and what we're trying to educate them on is love should never hurt. In some instances, it's financial. They're relying solely on the financial assistance of their abuser, and in a lot of cases, there are children involved, and so they're figuring or believing that they need to take the abuse to support their families, and that prevents a lot of them from leaving as well. And then another situation is just, again, going back to the cycle of violence, that whole honeymoon stage. They are truly in love in most cases, and they believe that when their offender or abuser comes back and tells them, I'm not going to do it again, that they really mean it. What we look to do is to educate and empower. And by doing that, we provide, through our partner agencies, we provide counseling services. We also, they are directed by some of our partner agencies to be able to go to some of our shelters, battered women's shelters, where they will have the opportunity to get skills training or be directed to get skills training, to get education, to find jobs that will help them feel like they can support their families without the assistance of their abusers. And again, it's a cycle, and our biggest goal is to, or our biggest fight is to break that cycle. One of the main things that we'd like to do or continue to do as a department is to educate and raise the awareness.
Mayor Pro Tem Burke.
I was going, thanks for that report.
Yes, ma'am.
It is difficult when a person is a victim. And no matter what we do, when a woman, even a man, some women abuse men too, but when a woman is afraid, she is afraid. I don't care what you tell her. The only way she feels safe is she can be removed from the situation altogether. Because some of those mean people, they will follow them every place they go, right into the city.
Yes, ma'am.
I've had experiences with women who have been victims to some of these people, and they are cruel. I mean, mean. We wouldn't even know how to act if we were around some people like that. And so I'm looking forward to getting a report to see where we're going with this. And you said a key something, when women get jobs.
Yes, ma'am.
Training in jobs that they can get a salary, that helps them to move from a situation. And so, Mr. Chairman, this is a good report.
Great report and excellent use of the funds.
Thank you.
Councilman Montgomery.
Just to say, I think one of what we do from a domestic violence standpoint in the domestic violence unit, I think, is great in the report. The numbers that we see here just further goes to show that we still have so much more work to do in our community when we look at violence against women. I, for a long time, worked with Family Services, domestic violence side, and volunteering with them, and went through all the process and the annual certification we had to do to even work within those areas, and so know firsthand some of those situations, and now in capacity of understanding and knowing, even from a shelter side, of how individuals work on and deal in some of those situations. And so the task that this unit has before them is a cumbersome one and an emotional draining one, to deal with, but it's a necessary one to walk with and to deal with individuals who are in these type of situations, so that we don't have more instances like we had when people's lives are lost due to domestic violence and sexual assaults that individuals and women go through. One question that I do have, and I think it's the legal definition, but as I've seen here on a couple different occasions, it specifically indicates the domestic violence of an individual from an opposite sex. Is that the way that is legally defined?
Yes, sir.
Can we write a letter, let them know that in 2015 they might need to change that? Because just in the fact that we know that that's not, that there are same-sex relationships where domestic violence happens in the same place, and I'm not sure from a court side, from a judicial side, if that has any bearing on how that is prosecuted, because the legal definition, I don't know if that has an impact or not, but just the fact of how that's defined, I think it's probably something that should be looked at, and I don't know how we can help some folk look at that differently in that side, but that was just the only piece that I had a question about.
Thank you, sir.
And again, the purple, I'm happy to wear my purple. I didn't know you would. But that's for domestic violence.
I know.
It is.
Too.
Thank you
Bessie.
for noticing.
Actually, I should know the answer to this, but it's a follow-up on Councilmember Montgomery's question. Is the 50B available in the case of same-sex abuser?
I'm going to defer to my domestic violence expert. You can just step up.
Available to people of the same sex.
I would just say that I know that they are in the process. Allison Cranford and other members of Family Services are working towards the same-sex relationships, and I know that that is in the process. As it relates to a 50B, the only way it's most likely going to be a 50C, unless they have lived together. Then they will be considered household members.
But a 50C as well.
And a 50C, I think it should be noted, is more of a civil, is that correct, and not criminal. It's a civil paper.
Thank you.
And that a 50C really is about anything other than someone that has had a relationship or have lived together, a family, household members, so anything other.
I can follow up offline. Thank you.
I think this all proves the point that there's much work to be done. I think we've done a good job, but there's definitely more to do. So, Captain Thompson, thank you again for the presentation and for the work that you do. There were some specific names that were called. Officer Johnson, Mrs. Martin, and Mrs. Sullivan. We thank you specifically for what you do as well.
Sir, if you would, I'd
Please.
like to introduce the supervisory team for the Criminal Investigations Division.
Certainly.
Where it takes all of us to get the job done. I'll start with Sergeant Horace Bryant, who supervises the Special Victims Unit, which includes the domestic violence detectives. Sergeant Kevin Bell, who supervises our Victims Assistance Coordinators, our Financial Crimes, Computer Forensics, Arson Investigator, and our Violent Crimes Task Force detective. Sergeant Priscilla Thomas, who supervises our Burglary Unit. Sergeant Mark Smith, who supervises our Robbery Unit and also our Polygraph Examiner. Sergeant Lisa Butner, who supervises our Homicide Unit. And they also investigate, in addition to homicides, suspicious deaths and special cases of missing persons, such as that of Mr. Hernandez from a couple weeks ago. I'm very fortunate to have two very, very strong lieutenants, and that's Lieutenant Eric Montgomery and Lieutenant Steve Tolley on our CID team as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. All right, members of the committee, we are rounding the hour. We'll move to item G4, please.
Fire Department Staffing Plan.
And given the presentation is our fairly new fire chief, Chief Mayo. Now, Chief Mayo, the police department has tried to dominate the airwaves. So we're going to give you an opportunity to get some work in. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Mayor, Pro Tem, other members of the committee and council. It's brought to my attention that you may not be able to see what's on the monitor very well. So that's a hard copy. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Before I begin, I'd like to recognize the very able Assistant Chief Frank Stowe, who is providing some administrative support for us tonight. So I want to take a few minutes and give you a little rundown on a proposed organizational restructure that would, if approved, would start taking place a few items in this fiscal year and then some items in next fiscal year. And some of the objectives for this reorganizational plan are to increase safety, improve command and control on the fire ground, give us some structure and some cohesiveness to our training programs across all platoons and all shifts, to provide some, by reducing some span of control, provide some operational consistency, and also to free up some folks to work on to do what I call light executive work. That is, things in the areas of accreditation, policy development, research, those sorts of things. We'll also be better able to address things like OSHA compliance, following CDC guidelines, those sorts of things, and also to be able to support development of our employees through being able to provide some things that they now have to go outside to get. We would make an effort to deliver some career development things internally, which will be more economical for us and more convenient for the employee. So we propose to do this through, so we currently have 3 vacant battalion chief positions, and we would run our next battalion chief assessment process after July 1st. And so the proposal is to reclassify 3 battalion chiefs to division chiefs. So they would sit between the battalion chiefs and the assistant chief of operations. So this would become the highest ranking shift chief. There'd be 1 per platoon. Also this is probably going to be a phased implementation, as you can see, but these would be new positions to add 6 safety and training officers. There'd be two per platoon, and they would report to the division chief, as do the battalion chief. So it would pull together under 1 management team member the battalion chiefs who are overseeing operations at the platoon level and the training that is being delivered to those platoons at the operational level. Again, to address some needs in terms of accreditation work, policy development, those things that I mentioned earlier, we propose reclassifying 1 firefighter to an administrative captain. So we would have an additional person working 8 to 5 Monday through Friday in step with fire administration to accomplish some of those tasks. And then the final part of this is to implement a part-time firefighter program next year, which will kind of just round this thing out and provide a lot of, we'll cut overtime costs, but a lot of the benefits of a part-time program in a fire department are difficult to monetize. But we can discuss those as we get to the end. So here you see some of the things I've already mentioned. So right now, the Assistant Chief of Operations has 12 direct reports. And in the fire service, we don't like to have, we like a span of control somewhere between 3 and 7. So you can see we're way outside of that span of control. We still maintain the 4 chief officers that we have on shift for managing the fire ground, and managing what we are moving around. We're moving resources around all day to address incidents that are going on, filling in holes that are created, and we would still have 4 chief officers to be able to handle that. I've already talked about the fourth bullet point there about how we would bring the shift training officers and then the battalion chiefs, we would bring them together under one management person for coordination across the platoon. And I've already spoken about the light executive work that we're going to accomplish by freeing up this shift chief officer to not be bogged down by answering calls and managing people and doing all this moving around that we do all day. That would still be handled by the battalion chiefs directly, but that would free this division chief up. So here we're talking about the shift training officers, and some of these things I've already touched on in the introduction. Right now we have no real good mechanism for delivering training in a structured manner. It's being done at the company officer level. The upshot of it all is some are more enthusiastic about it than others. Some are better at it than others. Some are more competent in some subject areas than they are in others. So this would help close those gaps that we are currently seeing with our training division. And the training division is any fire department's heart. If you don't have a well-run, competent training division, you suffer on so many fronts, not the least of which is safety. These shift training officers, we now have no good way to provide a dedicated, trained safety officer on all working events and without pulling somebody off of a company. And those people are not trained as safety officers. They're trained as company officers. So these safety and training officers that would be on each platoon would respond to all working events, all major events, and provide that safety position, somebody who has been trained to manage the safety function at an emergency scene. We would train them as peer fitness trainers. That's an initiative from the International Association of Firefighters it's not about running and doing sit-ups and jumping jacks and lifting weights. These would be people who are trained to help firefighters develop themselves physically based upon the job of a firefighter. There would be strength and conditioning and wellness initiatives based on what we do on the fire ground. Because you can bench press 500 pounds and you may not be any good to us on the fire ground. That doesn't give you any cardiovascular help. They would orchestrate our fire academy for us. And again, I've talked about that career development instruction. And then the last bullet, I think, speaks pretty loudly, is this program would positively affect our efforts to become an accredited agency in, as you see, 14 core competencies. There are about 60 or 65 core competencies under the fire service accreditation model, and if you do not meet one of those, you will not be an accredited agency. So this would address 14 of those, and then there are about 270 performance measures, and this would help us become more robust in 29 of those 270 performance measures. I think I've probably covered this in sufficient detail. This would free up somebody for an 8 to 5 administrative captain and doesn't require any additional authorized positions. You have 2 org charts in there, and my eyes get bad about this time of day. This is pretty small text, but it just kind of helps give you a visual representation of what we are now. And this is a simplified organizational chart. It does not reach down all the way into the company level on each platoon, so it's kind of the top tier of the fire department, if you will. So this is what we're doing today, and then the following one is what we're proposing to do. And then the final thing I have for you is the part-time program. It would not eliminate any full-time positions. This gives us a means, if we want to send folks off to training, if we have, if the flu runs through the fire department, if we want to pull companies, if we want to pull people off of companies for in-service training, it gives us a means to backfill some of those positions without it costing us $25 or $30 an hour, which is what it's costing us now in overtime. It also it gives us an ability, if we have vacancies and we have people in the part-time program who want to work for us full-time, you know, they're trained to the Winston-Salem way, they have our gear, they know our policies. It's more or less just a paperwork transition to bring them from the part-time side to the full-time side, because and we've run the numbers, I've run the numbers in the past, the most effective way and the most efficient way to run a fire department is to stay at full staff. And the final thing is you know, we are selecting firefighters based on, you know, their performance on a written exam, their performance on an agility test, and you know, our exposure to them in 30 minutes or an hour over those two things and an interview. And you know, as are all fire departments' selection processes, is we're recruiting and hiring firefighters. Nobody's process gives a very good indication as to whether or not somebody can be a company officer, a battalion chief, an assistant chief, the fire chief 15, 20, 25 years down the road. So this gives, you know, the part-time program for those who are coming into that program and want to be full-time, this gives us an opportunity to see those folks for 60, 90, 120 days, depending on how long it takes them, you know, for an opening to become available full-time. We get to look at those people and decide if they're a good fit for the Winston-Salem Fire Department in a full-time position or not. So that's the end of my presentation. I'll entertain any questions that you have.
Chief, I want to just first say thank you for bringing the presentation and report to us. I can always sense your passion when you speak, and I appreciate that. I think anytime you start talking about reclassifying and reorganizing, you're going to ruffle some feathers. But I believe this is ruffling some feathers in a pretty good way. I like your concept of adding some of the safety training officers, which ultimately improves on the service that we deliver to our citizens. And I think the part-time firefighter program is a good idea. You can't put a cost on safety, but eventually I believe it'll help us to reduce some of our costs while continuing to provide a high level of service. Mayor Pro Tem Burke. And I'll just come around.
The city manager probably hit the jackpot. You have you have two chiefs from the eastern part of North Carolina.
Yes, ma'am.
Wilson and Rocky Mount. And I have said some of the finest people come from the eastern part of North Carolina. I just said. And I was going to Rocky Mount, and I told these ladies, I said, oh, that's a fine place. And the lady said, you always talking about how fine they are down there. Oh, it's northeast or either way. And so we drove in near Rocky Mount. The little Boy Scouts were at the corner directing us how. And people were just so nice. So you might have hit the jackpot with these eastern North Carolina men. But one thing that I have been saying, Mr. Chairman, to the city manager, we need to provide more career development instruction inside.
Yes, ma'am.
All these computers, all these smarties around here that we have, and getting still, they got to go this place and that place instead of bringing them inside, teaching them here.
That's right.
And I think that's the plus, and I'm going to look forward to that. I really am. And also, when we hire people, sometimes the people at the different level, it takes them a long time to move sometimes. And I think you're looking at moving people and giving them opportunity to look quicker than we have been doing in the past.
Yeah, this will create some job enrichment opportunities, yes, ma'am. I think we're talking about the same thing.
Yes. And I do like what the chairman said, when you have a job to do, you have a job to do it, and to do that job. And I would hope that you would do it and know that you have us with you. I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anyone else.
Thank you.
When people want to do a good job and progress, then I'm for that, and I thank you.
Thank you.
And to Councilmember Burke's point, based on your proposal, Chief, what I'm sensing is all firefighters don't have to start full-time. Based on your part-time program, they might have the ability to start part-time and matriculate up to a full-time position.
That's right. That's right. I have used this in organizations, agencies in the past, and it's been quite successful. And you're right, not everybody's going to like it, but I'll tell you what I tell them, and everybody seems to understand this. Being the fire chief, is very often about making the best decision, and that is not the same thing as making a good decision.
We know a little
Sometimes
something
you
about
don't
that.
get good choices, but you still have to make a choice, and I think this is the best choice.
Yes, sir. Councilmember Light.
Okay, and we're going to go back to basics here.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't understand what is a platoon, a battalion, a company?
So a platoon is what a lot of fire departments call a shift. So we run a 3-platoon system. So in our operations division, 1/3 of our operations employees are at work today, and 2/3 of them are off. And a third will work tomorrow, and the 1/3 that's on today will be off, and another 1/3 will be off. And then a battalion is a geographic breakdown. So we break down the city into geographic areas, and we call those battalions, and they are essentially a collection of our fire facilities, our fire stations. So a certain number of fire stations and the companies that they house would fall into a battalion. So you go from battalion chief, who has a collection of companies, to a division chief who has a collection of battalions.
Okay, yeah. So a company is,
That is one unit, one heavy apparatus resource, an engine
Okay.
company, a ladder company, a rescue company. Typically, a company officer and 3 or 4 personnel.
okay, all right, now I'm getting the picture. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll continue with the ladies first. Councilman Adams.
Councilmember Light, I was going to say, if you're up, check out Chicago Fire. You will,
Uh-oh.
wait, Chief. What I'm saying is, if you want to learn how basic the organization is for information, I'm not saying any of that's true, but I always tell people, if you want to learn things, sometimes you need to look at stuff on television, yes, and get a basic framework. I just want to commend you on the work that you're doing, your management style. As I've talked to some of the fire personnel one-on-one and in groups, and I've informed them that when new people come in and bring new and innovative ideas, you have to be receptive and responsive to that. So I have asked, which I know, they will, I've asked, just like any changing of anything, you need to be receptive and open to the idea and the innovation. I think what you've done is you've touched on 2 or 3 areas that I've been concerned about. Everybody knows how passionate I am about safety and training. If you're not prepared, and you and your team and Chief Roundtree and his team and Mr. Sadler, you are the emergency responders that people look to know your job. The subject matter experts, when you come to see about me and my family and my community, we want you to be knowledgeable. We don't want to worry about anything. We want to know that we are in your hands and you are going to make everything all right. So I support you in your decisions and what you're doing. Again, if there is anything that I can do in this council, we are behind you. And I know we're trying to find our meeting date, and we're going to do that next week, where you and I can get a chance to sit down and go one-on-one. But thank you for being here in Winston-Salem, and I look forward to working with you.
Thank you. Now, tell the truth. You watch Chicago Fire so you can look at Kelly Severide, don't you?
Well,
that's why my wife.
It don't hurt.
That's why my wife watches it.
It don't hurt.
I sit there and roll my eyes and say, they need a better consultant. You can't do what you're doing.
It all comes out at the Public Safety Committee. Councilman Montgomery. Councilmember Bessie is recognized.
From a lay standpoint, this looks like an impressively thoughtful restructuring proposal, and I wish you the best in implementing this. I did have one specific question about the part-time firefighter program. Are you conceiving of this as an alternative entry method, or do you expect this to become the principal entry method to the force?
Where I hope to get is that we will get into a habit of running a recruiting and selection hiring process at approximately the same time every year. And we would bring some folks in on the full-time side and some folks in on the part-time side concurrently. If you're not careful, it's easy to bring folks into the part-time side who are already trained, and have been working at another fire department. And sometimes that favors certain demographics more than it does others. So we just have to be careful about the way we do that. That's why we typically bring them into both programs simultaneously.
That makes sense conceptually, that it becomes an alternative entry method as opposed to the anticipated modal entry method for everybody.
That's right.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for Chief Mayo? Chief, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Hearing nothing else, I thank everybody for coming out. We'll hereby consider this meeting to be adjourned.